What does the Nico Iamaleava saga mean for Mississippi State? Let's talk.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Jaron, that's Landon, and we had some big news in college football. Tennessee quarterback, I guess I should say former Tennessee quarterback, Nico Iamaleava. Hopefully I'm saying that right, but you know, as probably as close as many people could get there. But so anyways, crazy situation happened on Thursday last week. It was first reported that he was in renegotiations for his NIL deal with Tennessee. His father, his manager, if you want to call it, both came out and said, nope, this isn't happening. This is all made up, blah, blah, blah. Then on Friday, he doesn't show up to practice.
It was not made up.
Yeah, and it was not made up. And then on Saturday, it was reported that Tennessee and him had agreed to part ways. So, yes, I know what your first thinking is. This is a Mississippi State podcast. Why are you talking about Tennessee? But it's because this might become the new norm in college football.
Yeah, this is huge. This is the first time it's happened, but
right,
definitely not going to be the last.
No.
I mean, and part of it comes from, I was reading an article about this today where, like, when he signed his NIL deal, first they had to go through all these courts to allow it to be legal because they were trying to pay him while he was in high school.
Yeah, and Tennessee fought for him on that.
And once that was passed, since then, he has gone from being the highest paid quarterback to like the 12th highest paid quarterback.
Yeah.
Which we see that all the time in the NFL. I mean, we joke about the NFLification of college football. This is the first step. We're having a holdout and for contract negotiations.
Yeah, and it sounded like, so he was paid about 2.5 is what it sounds like, his NIL deals total. And he was wanting 4, which is about what reportedly Carson Beck was getting, which I believe he is now the highest paid quarterback. Carson Beck is. Bryce Underwood. Yes, I almost said Bryce Young. And I'm like, that's not right. Bryce Underwood apparently got, he apparently got $3 million. I think John Mateer at Oklahoma got around $3 million. So he wanted to get in the $4 million ballpark. And kind of Tennessee's thoughts was, like, we made you the highest paid quarterback. We fought for you in the courts, and your play really didn't warrant to be the highest paid quarterback. And so we're not going to go and break the bank until you show that you are there. But it sounds like from stuff I've heard, stuff I've read, this has been an ongoing thing with him specifically, and it's been a feud for a while between him and Tennessee. Apparently, Josh Pate said that these were conversations that were happening before the playoff game, and he almost sat out the playoff game. And Pate added he wasn't the only one.
That's crazy that he wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many crazy stories coming out about this, and that his play last year, I mean, didn't really warrant a raise. Let's be honest. I mean, he has all the talent in the world. He was my favorite quarterback, as far as talent goes coming out of that class. But one of my best friends is a Tennessee fan, and he screenshotted the numbers. He was like, this is worth $4 million.
Yeah.
With a bunch of exclamation points. I got to agree with him on that. The play in the past is not. It's a bold move. I mean, sitting out like this, what do you do? Like, all of the stuff's kind of kept under wraps, and we're kind of talking about it now, but still no one knows what these deals really are.
Right.
And to do that, because one of the teams I reported, like, he was talking to Miami to move at one point, which obviously that's not
going
to be something that can happen. But if this becomes the new norm, things are going to get weird.
Yeah, for sure. And to preface everything we're saying here, Landon just mentioned he was his favorite quarterback coming out of that class. I'm a big Nico fan. I think he's a star in the making. Now, he didn't have a star freshman year or redshirt freshman year, first year starting, but we see that all the time. Yeah, he has all the talent. I think he's going to be a very, very good college quarterback, and I think he's going to be a good pro too. I think the issue is, and I saw someone talk about this, this is where the NCAA has failed the kids in terms of, because they haven't set regulations, they can be represented by anyone. They don't have to be represented by people that are agents and have agent license and all this stuff. So that's why his dad is representing him and a family friend is representing him, even though they have no history of making these negotiations. I think it was Andy Staples said it perfectly. If he's represented by an agent, this gets resolved in December and you never hear about it.
Yeah.
But because he's being represented by people that don't know what they're doing, and they started leaking out to fill out feelers out, and then those colleges called Tennessee to let them know that feelers were being sent out, which the report is Dan Lanning at Oregon was the one who tipped off Josh Heupel. I hope that's true because that's amazing.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But that's because it was a dad and a manager that didn't know what they were doing, and they ended up screwing them. But how does this now affect Mississippi State?
I mean, right now, probably not much today.
Right.
Or this season, but in a year or 2 years, do holdouts become something that you expect, and not just from the superstar or possible superstar quarterback? Do like your defensive ends start calling up their buddies on other teams, asking how much they're getting made and holding out until they match that?
Right.
And it doesn't have to be for $4 million. It could be, instead of 10 grand, I want 15.
Yeah.
Which for some of these collectives, that's, chump change, and they wouldn't even, that's not even making news. But if enough people start doing this, it's going to get crazy fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why you have to, first off, you have to come in and have contracts. I've seen people that are like, well, the NFL does holdouts and stuff. Yeah, but they're still under contract.
Mm-hmm. They're going to be fined for not showing up.
Right. And he held out, but he just then enters the portal and goes wherever he wants to go. So you got to have contracts, whether that's a 2-year, 3-year, whatever it is. You need to have contracts. I think also you should be only allowed to transfer one time. But as far as Mississippi State goes, I heard a coach say this once, and I believe it wholeheartedly. You recruit your problems. And what I mean by that is, Nico seems like a good kid, and I think he's just taking bad advice, which, again, I understand some people are like, man, you're an adult. You just got to tell your dad, no, we're doing it this way. That's your dad. Okay. Yeah. And that's someone that you're trusting their opinion on it. And so it's a tough situation that he's in. Now, I don't want to let him off the hook. At the end of the day, he does make the final decisions, but you recruit your problems. And what I mean by that is, you mentioned what Tennessee had to do NIL wise just to get him there. They had to pay him a ton of money. He was the highest paid quarterback in college football at one point without even stepping on the field. They knew he was really his father and helper were all driven by money.
Yep.
And you knew that coming in. So why are you surprised now that the season's over that he's still driven by money?
Yeah, I mean, the recruiting, the character is going to become an even more important part, because there's always that line that,
and the character of your agent or whoever you're being represented by.
Your inner circle. Because there's always that line where you put up with so much because of the talent and what that person brings to the field. But when there's no repercussions for just going, nah, I'm out, someone will pay me more. Yeah. That line shifts a lot to where it's like, I'm not going to put up with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you have to be aware of that. That's why I want to say to Mississippi State fans and really all college football fans, there's always something to the story, more to the story than we know. Like if you're after a big time recruit and then all of a sudden you see, Mississippi State isn't interested in that recruit anymore. A lot of people immediately go, oh, that's just because you knew you couldn't get them. Or they just get mad. Why were you aren't after him? You just don't know the full story sometimes. Sometimes the story is that they knew he was difficult to deal with. They didn't like his character. They didn't like who his inner circle was. And you have to now take all that into consideration. I saw a GM in the SEC say, was asked about this Nico situation. And he said, as soon as he saw that, he texted everyone on his staff and said, this will not happen here. And that's exactly what now has to happen in terms of, and he's saying that to say, we got to make sure we have the right guys, first off, that we're recruiting. They have the right inner circle that we want to deal with. And we are not going to be doing these negotiation things like this. And that's how it affects Mississippi State going forward, is because this is probably going to become a new norm.
Yeah, and another thing that could cause a team to just be out on someone is what their NIL number is. Some kids walk in out of high school and I want to make this. And, when you're a 5-star quarterback, sometimes you can make that call. Most people can't. And there's been quotes from a bunch of coaches that are like, yeah, when I'm talking to a player, if I'm recruiting him, if he says one of his first questions is, how much money am I going to make from NIL? We're done.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
So, I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable response, because it's like, if that's all that's driving you, why do I want you here?
And sometimes, despite how good the player is, that's the decision you got to make.
Yeah.
Obviously you might have to make some exceptions, 5-star quarterback or something like that. But if you have that, you need to have a backup plan, because if he is motivated by money like that, which I'm not saying that's an issue. If there's a lot of people motivated by money that aren't making,
there's a line like too between being motivated by it and being controlled by it.
Right.
Crazy decision.
But the crazy thing with Nico is, and I keep people saying, oh, well, now he's out of the Josh Heupel type offense, which really doesn't help him for the NFL. So that would be good for him. But where's he going to go? Because originally, like, USC was mentioned, Notre Dame was mentioned. I thought USC with Lincoln Riley would have been a home run.
Yeah.
They don't want him. Notre Dame doesn't want him. They said today on Monday, North Carolina doesn't want him. Like, the teams that you hear now are UCLA, who was terrible last year and in the Big Ten. Tulane. Now, he'll put up big numbers, but at Tulane, you're not going to go get recruited high and all this stuff. But apparently Tulane is offering over $5 million or something like that. I saw that report out there for him, and he wanted $4 million, So we'll see what ends up happening and where he ends up going.
But chase your money.
Right. But the thing is, you left a team that just made the playoff. You're now taking it into your second year. You look like a team that's ready to compete for national championships with you there, and you're leaving that to go to maybe UCLA or Tulane or
that's
just weird.
That's something that could come back to haunt him in the NFL draft.
Yeah, it absolutely could. All right, well, coming up next, we're going to kind of talk about the positive side of this new college football era. One of Mississippi State's defensive players, he kind of stuck it out, and it looks like he's carved out himself a role on the defense this year. We're going to talk about that and why that probably is going to be a lost art in the future. All right, there's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save up to 60% off for you and your family. Here's why I use Gametime. It's the last-minute deals, like I mentioned, save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., whatever you like. The all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first to listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so we kind of have to get into Mr. Tillman, Zakari Tillman. He's ready for a major step in 2025. He's been with Mississippi State over the years. He kind of helped build Mississippi State. A lot of the players like him have helped build Mississippi State over the years. But this is a guy that, like I said, has been around, and it now looks like he's going to carve out a role. So kind of talk about that, and also, like I mentioned before the break, that's kind of probably be a lost art in college football.
Yeah, he, as a freshman, he was on special teams, carved out a role for himself there. Last year, got on the field as a linebacker, playing in the majority, was it 12 games, 30 tackles, 3.5 sacks, filled up the stat sheet over the season with a little bit of everything. I mean,
yeah, he was one of the few that actually had pass rush success last year.
And now he's kind of set up to be a leader of the defense. And you don't, like we kind of just touched on, you don't see that often. You don't see the player stick it out and slowly work his way up at, these bigger schools. I mean, anything over you see people work up to be like a junior in the lower levels, and then all of a sudden they get their payday and go transfer to try to go somewhere else. So you don't see someone really stick it out for 3 years like this anymore.
Well, and especially he was a 3-star recruit. A lot of times those 3-star recruits earlier in their college career, especially at the big schools like an SEC school, if they can't really carve out a role, they'll just go to the group of 5 type schools and see if they can go start there. But no, I mean, he was someone that, like you mentioned, he carved out a role on special teams as a freshman. And that's, they talk about this a lot in the NFL, but it's also a reality in college a lot of times. They tell you to carve out a role on special teams. All those guys drafted in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round or go undrafted, carve out a role on special teams, show that you're reliable there, and then we'll see what happens. Shannon Sharp has talked about that. He NFL Hall of Fame tight end, but he carved out a role on special teams. Terrell Davis, NFL Hall of Fame running back, he talked about carving out a role on special teams, had the big tackle on special teams. That kind of
90s Denver Broncos right now.
Yeah, I know. Just quoting the 90s Denver Broncos. But there's a couple that carved out a role in special teams. We've talked about Zach Brown for the Eagles, was longtime special teamers, was first team All-Pro this last year. So he carved out a role in special teams. He didn't say, this ain't working for me after that year. Let me go to, Arkansas State or something. Let me stay here and keep working. Carved out a role on the team last year. Like I said, they didn't have much success pass rushing last year, but he was one of the few that had decent success.
Yeah, and decent success in coverage. I mean, to get a linebacker with 3 pass deflections and a pick, I mean, that's right. That's good, especially when you can get some pass rush from him too. Yeah, he's really carved out a role, and hopefully he continues the development. Like you see, he learns from that last year, and now he's ready to take another step forward. I mean, Levy talked about him and said he's a guy that has the opportunity to be a really good player, has a chance to make these strides and create consistency inside the building, and he's doing that right now. So, yeah, he's stepping up and being a leader. If he's creating consistency inside the building, and that's coming from the head coach, that means he's one of the guys who's, trying to take that standard up a notch and be like, this is now what's acceptable.
Yeah, and last year he was the only one that had more than 1 sack. I mean, they had Brandon Jennings obviously had 1.5 sack, but he's the only one that had more than 2 sacks, I guess you want to say. And then he had 4 tackles for loss, which was tied for 3rd on the team. And then we mentioned, he had 30 tackles. So again, this is a guy that also could have went into last year, had decent success. I wouldn't say he had a ton of success, but had decent success and could have been like, coming this year again, let me go find something else where I can be a full-time starter and just go. But no, he stayed. And these are the guys that build these kind of programs, players like him that will just stick it out, keep working, and then hopefully you have that breakout year. If it's not this year, maybe next year. For Mississippi State, hopefully it's this year.
He's also the kind of guy that makes us all love college football. Yes, we all love the star, the 5-star that comes in and lights the world on fire from the day they step on campus. But the guy that you get attached to, who's from the same state, he's a Mississippi kid. He goes there, he works his butt off, he starts moving up the depth chart, he starts making an impact. That's the guy we all love to root for. I mean, he's what makes guys like him, or what make college football special when it is special.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Those are the guys, like you said, that you grew up rooting for and you're excited about again. Now, according to this depth chart, again, it's on our lads, so it's not like an official depth chart or anything. He's listed at weak side linebacker, and he's listed as the backup to Jalen Smith, who obviously was a transfer this offseason from Tennessee. So we'll see if he ends up carving out a starting role and what ends up happening with him, because maybe, we keep talking about how these are rare players, but maybe if he doesn't start again, maybe he does seek the transfer portal. And I don't fault guys like that who are 3 years, have been at a school, and just someone has been better than them ahead of them. And they're like, hey, my last year, it's my last chance to ever play football. I want to play, so I'm going to go somewhere where I can start. I don't fault those guys at all. But we just talked about the Nico situation. This is like the complete opposite of that situation with how Tillman has handled this whole process.
Yeah, and it's great to see people are still doing that. And when you said linebacker Jalen Smith, I had a flashback to a Dallas Cowboys player that didn't play very well.
Yeah, right.
But, with linebackers, you have to have such a deep rotation that even if he isn't the starter, he's probably playing close to starter snaps just because of how often you have to rotate. And heck, maybe after 2 games, they find a new spot for him to start if he keeps – he led the team in sacks last year, which is just wild.
Yeah,
One linebacker does it too. That number's 3.5.
Right, and you just have to find ways to get them on the field now, and that's what you got to do as a player, force them to get you on the field. But all right, we'll come back. We got to talk some basketball portal talk. There's several players that are visiting. We also have a KeShawn Murphy update. We'll have that after the break.
Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Surprising insights: when I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery, and now I budget smarter and save more. All in one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. And take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year.
All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast, your team every day. All right, so we got to get into some portal talk. This is from the Maroon and White Daily. It's their Monday Dog Biscuits. We've talked about them many times. Again, if you don't subscribe, go subscribe to them. They put out great content. But one of their first biscuits talked about some of the upcoming transfers that are coming in for a visit. One of them is Wichita State transfer wing Corey Washington. He visited on Monday, and he's expected to leave today to eventually visit SMU. So we'll see what happens there. They also said that Mississippi State held a Zoom meeting with former Michigan and Alabama transfer Sam Walters. That was on Sunday night. He hasn't set up an official visit as of yet. And then like we mentioned, I believe on yesterday's podcast, Malik Ewan is expected to visit Mississippi State later this week. So a lot of visits happening, a lot of things happening behind the scenes that we aren't sure about.
Yeah, a lot going on. And Corey Washington's a guy I would like to see them bring in. I mean, he's that type we've talked about, the 6'6", 6'7" guy on the outside who can score, is not a bad shooter. Not great, but not terrible.
Yeah, no, it would be a good signing. And it would be, hey, another Mississippi State player in the transfer portal that possibly got. But I know he's drawing interest from several SEC schools, but also several ACC schools. So we'll see what happens there. That's why we're not really sure, because, there's a lot of schools still in the hunt for him. But maybe his teammate can kind of talk him into possibly coming. Yeah, maybe Quincy Ballard can kind of talk to him a little bit.
Deal.
Yeah, get him to come. But we'll see what ends up happening. But they also gave a KeShawn Murphy update. We said on yesterday's show there was at least some optimism out there that KeShawn Murphy would be thinking about possibly returning to Mississippi State. He was around for some visits last week. He was also, FaceTiming some of his teammates. And so there was at least some kind of feeling that, okay, maybe he will come back. It looks like, barring something crazy, which obviously could happen in the transfer portal era, they do not expect him to come back.
That's tough, just because we had kind of accepted the fact he was gone.
Yeah.
We thought he might be coming back, and now we got to accept that he's gone.
Now he's gone again. Yeah, and we've already talked about many times. You can go listen to some of our podcasts last week. We talked about many times about how big of a loss it would be if he decided to move on. So we don't have to really rehash all that. But Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. Obviously, you wanted him in the fold. When we talked about the team right after they lost NCAA tournament, he was one of the keys we talked about returning and taking off for next year. It sounds like they've had some really strong positive portal momentum, so he would definitely be a great piece to keep. And so it's tough if he chooses not to go. I'm curious where he goes now because it's strange because he's more of a center in terms of how he plays because he's not much of a shooter. He's more back to the basket, but he's not really tall enough to play center. He needs to play more of a power forward. So I wonder if he goes and plays center at one of like the group of 5 type schools, or if there's a team that maybe has a stretch center that he can actually play power forward and post them. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where he goes.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those, small ball centers that were all super popular in the NBA like 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we'll see. And I don't want to give all their stuff away. They have, they have 6 little nuggets. We gave you one of them. Definitely, go over there and check them out. A lot of football stuff, a lot of recruiting stuff on there. So definitely subscribe to them and give them a follow. But yeah, I mean, so that's some bummer news. We were so excited yesterday. With the optimism, but it sounds like our hopium is gone.
All gone. All of that is gone. Hopefully that we get some more good news, at least with some people coming out of the portal.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of visits this week or this weekend. So
hopefully some good news comes out of those.
Fingers crossed. Let's hope. All right. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. As your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We talked about every single Mississippi State player that I believe that was last Thursday or Wednesday, one of the two. Go listen to that show and you can hear all of our breakdown of some Mississippi State prospects. So check that out. I'm Jaron. Check out my work on Athlon Sports, a lot of college football, NBA, college basketball, not as much right now, but definitely some portal stuff. So follow that. There's my social media. Follow me on social media. There's Landon's social media, so give him a follow as well. Follow Locked On Mississippi State. We're on Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube, posting videos on all of them. So definitely check those out. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, all the fun stuff. And until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.